I'm looking at your program 632, subprogram 438, which relates to the Bureau of Gender Affairs. And I've been looking as well at the program, the part of the program, your program document, which addresses the things that these resources are meant to deliver. Minister, I have a concern. I have a concern that on the question of gender equity and gender equality, that most of what the ministry is proposing to deliver is process-oriented and event-oriented. I see reference to days, 16 days of activism, which is an important thing, International Men's Day. I see reference to advisory councils. I see reference to national policies. I see very little reference to results. What is it that we want to see accomplished with respect to gender equity and gender equality in this country? Having had a national policy on gender since, 2016? What are we saying that we are delivering? I hear, for example, more recently, and Minister, you were involved in this conversation, a reference to we need to do X and Y for single mothers. And I would dare not disagree with that. But what is that based on? Is it a question of single mothers, or is it a question of the burden that custodial parents are facing in this country, whether they're single mothers or they're single fathers? Where is the gender analysis across ministries and departments that is informing policy? Where is the clear response on gender-based violence in this country? I run the risk, Minister, of, I do not want to offend anyone. I know that there is a resource issue. There has always been a resource issue when it comes to what we call national women's machineries or bureaus of gender affairs or women's departments, not just in this country, but all across the world. So my question does not suppose that I don't understand that that resource question is real. I see that there are transfers to NGOs and so on, but I want to hear from you, Minister. What is it that we are saying that we are going to deliver as a government on gender? Barbados has been a pioneer in this field and has been part of this Caribbean region that has been a pioneer in this field, starting with sexual and reproductive rights for women. I can go on and on. But I feel slightly embarrassed. As someone who has started my career in the area of feminist economics and what it means to be a woman and have to access resources, Mr. Chairman, I see you fidgeting with the microphone. I will wrap up shortly.
Please do, honorable member.
But I want to hear what is the plan. Because if it were up to me, every ministry and department would have to bring a gender equity statement when it comes to estimates and say, what is your ministry delivering? How will it impact men and women differently? Just as they would have to bring a climate response statement to say, how is your program addressing the climate crisis if it is an infrastructure ministry? We have to take it seriously, and I want to hear how this ministry plans to take it seriously.
Minister, I would let the head of the Gender Bureau speak to this, please.
Good morning, ministers. I'm Patricia Boyce, Director, Bureau of Gender Affairs. Minister, in response to your question, there are a number of initiatives that we have started and that we will continue in this new financial year. First, we have been trying to have a number of focal points throughout the various ministries. We started that process early in 2000. We are in the process of working with UN Women to have a discussion with our permanent secretaries across ministries. What we are hoping to achieve from that is to have 2 focal points identified for training, and this training will be provided by UN Women, and the output from that training will be to help development of more gender-aware policies coming from the departments. What we're also doing, we had some training sessions with our senior teams in our ministry, looking at the institutional arrangements that are needed to transform the departments in our current ministry. This was done by UNDP. We are also, in terms of the amalgamation, we are looking at a gender data strategy where we would have persons look at how they are operating, what is needed to ensure that they reach the identified targets that the resources are meant for, to look at what are the challenges that those persons are encountering. That is in terms of the mainstreaming of the gender at this point. In terms of the national policy, we have recently brought on a consultant to update and review the national policy on gender. That review has been completed and is in the ministry for review. We have incorporated aspects of climate change into that document because that was something that was missing from the previous document, and we are hoping that come early next year that this new policy, this draft policy would be adopted by Barbados. It looks at the gaps that are that we are currently facing in terms of women and children and men. So we're trying to close that gender gap.
So, Minister, I note your question, and I understand very well your concern. And to what extent are we just doing things, right? Like, are we just doing things? Are we just engaging in different things? What is it that is influencing our policy position? Why haven't we mainstreamed gender better? What, if any, is the knowledge gap in understanding these gender issues? Do we have a proper understanding of what may be the inequitable distribution of resources between men and women in Barbados? And has our policy position been influenced by this understanding? And therefore, the things that we are doing are real. To what extent have we located the necessity to have gender mainstream throughout the service and throughout Barbados? So that different, as you said, I thought you answered your question almost at the end, in relation to having different departments also present on what they're doing on gender. But I think to get there, we have to give them the knowledge so that the programs that they too attempt to implement are based in some local understanding of things. And then, given all that we know, how do we then shape these things in a real way so that, we speak of the advancement for women, our capacity as a country, long before many others, to be doing things in health for women. What are the new areas, right? Like, where are we not talking about, what has the research in health, for example, said to us about female-related cancers or male-related cancers, and how are we treating to these things? What is the knowledge that we are using to be able to make these decisions? And are we being superfluous in our positioning? Is our policies and our programs, as a result, not profound enough to be of real significance? These are meaningful things, and the truth is, Minister, beyond, for the last few years, I think, regrettably, we haven't been able to elevate a gender conversation to the level that it needs to be elevated to. We haven't been able to treat to these issues, I think, across the board, because it really has to be across the board. I think even as I spoke, and I hear you and I take your point, even as we spoke about the work at Sterling, that was in relation to the evidence of the number of young women coming forward with children and not necessarily young men. But does that mean there are no men? Which is, I think, so is that understanding that I don't think that we've properly communicated, perhaps because we probably don't have it all. And then there is a need for us to do some honest introspection and to attempt to be in a position, an informed position on these gender issues, and not just be driven by a need for us to do things. So I take the point, and hopefully when we come back to you in a year, that we are in a better position to be able to answer what I think are very important questions.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate that you seem to have a very good understanding of what needs to be done, and so I look forward. I hope it will not take a year. The only thing I will say is that we've been gender mainstreaming for 20 years, and it is not rocket science. The four-question approach, the first principles approach that we've been using, what is the public interest, what is the public mischief, can technology give us the results that we want? And the last question is your money question, Minister. What is the group, or what are the groups that are going to be disadvantaged or affected differently by this policy? You sit in cabinet, I propose to you, and you apply that framework, in particular on gender, and you will have your policy mainstreamed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.